So I'm going to be doing a topic which is connected to something that you're probably all very tired of hearing. So the topic is connected to the idea of the lives that matter. Now, this is not going to be a discussion of the merits of either side. This is actually going to be a discussion of how we take sides. In other words, we're just going to be talking about how we communicate. This is not me voicing my opinion on the matter. That's already been done a million times. You have your opinion. Other people have their opinion. You've all shared them on Facebook, and I think that pretty much stands for itself. But what I'm most interested in is looking at all the passion and the upset feelings, and how do we as a church discuss these topics and express things that we feel passionate about, and still remain a church at the end of the day, a unified group. And so really what I'm talking about is not this particular issue. It just happens to be the issue that we're talking about, at least for the last couple of months, unless you've been living under a rock and don't know about it. But the discussion of the lives that matter. So the discussion simply goes like this. In a nutshell, one person says Black Lives Matter. Okay, those are three words. They are 100% accurate, as stated. They leave the mouth or the keyboard of the person stating it, and they go through the air or the whatever medium you're on, and they arrive at the brain of the person who believes all lives matter. They produce a response, and it's a negative response, and that's why they try to retort something. Maybe it's clever or whatever, but they reply, all lives matter. Three words, which are great words all together. They are 100% accurate. They go through whatever format, arrive back at the first person, and then all hell breaks loose. Why? How is it that two statements that are 100% accurate can produce such a response in both people? I mean, think about it like this. If you said grass is green, yes it is. And it arrived at me and I said sky is blue. Actually, today it's not. It's cloudy out. But above the clouds, the sky is blue. We're focused on different things. And what's going on? What are we doing? Why are we having these differences, and why such the heated opinion? Well, in the second example, I've taken out, the passion. I've taken out the cause out of all this. But I want to discuss why a little bit. And I'm not going to rely heavily on that analogy because it's a bad analogy, as all analogies are bad analogies. Just so you know that. But there are several things that impact this, and so I want to go through this. It's going to take a little bit longer, but I'll try not to bore you. Please don't leave. This is not going to be a discussion of why I think one side is better than the other. This is just simply a discussion of how we do sides and why it ends up doing what it does to us as a church. Well, the side that believes Black Lives Matter. Actually, no. Let me give a statement before we get into that. We have fears, and that's one of the things that guides our hesitance to accept things as statements. We have fears. If I accept this statement, I'm going to have to give up a core value. We have core values. So if I'm a Black Lives Matter person and I've observed, either personally or with people I know or whatever, people who have legitimately suffered because of something they can't control, and they're in this group of people, when I hear all lives matter, I might be thinking that I've got to give up my observations of a specific group of people that are going through a particular thing. So I will draw some offense at that. On the other hand, if I'm an all lives matter person, I may feel like, well, I've observed other groups that have suffered things, and it feels like you're diminishing those groups. And so, because I have these core values, I'm afraid that I'm going to have to give up ground, in other words, that I have to retake later. We don't like to give up ground that I have to retake later. I don't like to accept premises that contradict or feel like they're contradicting things that are my core values, the things I'm observing. I'm observing the grass is green. I'm observing the sky is blue. This is where my focus is right now. Another thing that happens is that we interpret poorly what other people are saying. So, if I'm a person that feels very passionate about Black Lives Matter, and I express that, and I post that, whatever, in whatever forum, and without acknowledging that statement, I hear you say, all lives matter. That doesn't come back as all lives matter. And this is why the reaction. What I hear is Black lives don't matter. That's what I've heard. Now, you've said something completely different, but I've heard something that is very offensive. Or I might maybe be hearing Black lives matter less. Whatever. It's still offensive. Okay, let's flip that, because a person who is a Black Lives Matter person, this is probably you're tracking with what I'm saying. So I want to now flip this, because the same thing happens on the other side. A person who posts or has stated all lives matter, when they hear the phrase Black Lives Matter, and I'm not talking about in reference to the specific organization. I'm just speaking among Christians, saying these things, promoting what God would promote. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. When I hear Black Lives Matter, I might be hearing something different. I might be hearing Black Lives Matter more, or only Black Lives Matter. Well, that would be offensive too. And probably neither thought is intended by the person speaking. But imagine if we had that discussion. Well, that would look a lot like everything that's gone on Facebook. So now you have the interpretation of what's been actually going on Facebook and why they're so heated, because people have been likely misinterpreting what the other person was saying. And I'm not saying it's your fault for misinterpreting. Maybe it wasn't clearly communicated, or whatever the case may be. But somewhere between point A and point B, a message which was 100% accurate becomes something which is highly offensive on both sides. And this is the problem of sides. Now, we get into scriptures, because when we have something that we're passionate about, especially as Christians, we start amassing information to prove it. As Christians, we resort largely to the scriptures. I'm looking for scriptures, and then it doesn't have to be this issue. It could be a doctrinal discussion, faith, baptism, or whatever the thing we're talking about. We look for scriptures and build this, index of scriptures to support my core value and my worldview. Then if we don't feel that that's enough, we'll resort to bad analogies. As I said, all analogies are bad analogies. I've seen too many. And we try to build this case for why you should think like me. And so a person who believes in the cause Black Lives Matter will point out the 99 and the 1. God leaving 99 who are safe and going out to get this one group that was in danger. That's a very potent scripture. It applies. It's applicable. Or they might point out 1 Corinthians, where it talks about chapter 12, where a group which gets less honor, we bestow as a body more abundant honor. Again, it's a scriptural applicable lesson. The person who is the all lives matter side will then say, well, what about there is neither Greek nor Jew, or male or female? It's not even that one racial group that has, no distinction, but it's all groups. We don't distinguish between groups. What about passages which speak of all human as suffering? Suffering is a human problem, and so if we emphasize one group, what about another group? And all of these are scriptural principles which apply. And so now we have statements which are 100% true, 100% backed up by Scripture, being rejected and having people being offended on them, at them on both sides. Well, I want to look very quickly at how we address this as a church, and especially how we reconcile the idea that here's scriptures which seem to be contradictory. Well, obviously, no script. We have to begin by saying and acknowledging that scriptures don't disagree with one another. So how do we reconcile them? When my worldview seems to be supported by this set of scriptures, and your worldview seems to be supported by that set of scriptures, how do we reconcile that? And this is the simple biblical answer, is that we both have to give up. I didn't say you have to give up your core values. I'm saying you have to give up this idea that there's this exclusive worldview that you have, that you're right, and only right. See, we have this idea that different means contradictory. The grass being green and the sky being blue are different statements, but they're not contradictory. And Black Lives Mattering and All Lives Matter, they're not contradictory. They're simply different statements. So for the person who has posted or spoken of a cause for Black Lives Matter, I would say give up for just a second. Allow yourself to say, to think, to agree with the statement, all lives matter, without qualification. In other words, without saying, yes, all lives matter, but. No buts. Just state it, or think it, acknowledge it, acknowledge the scriptures, acknowledge the core values, even the bad analogies if you have to. But open your eyes to the fact that all lives matter is a true statement. It should not be offensive to you. Because in it, there are other groups other than one specific racial group that are suffering because of an identity. Okay, that's one side. Are you a person that's responded, well, all lives matter? Okay. Do all lives matter? Do you think all lives matter? Well, all lives matter. All is an all-inclusive group. On a Venn diagram, this is a really big circle. And there's lots of little circles inside of it. And one of those little circles inside of it is Black lives. If all lives matter, then the statement Black Lives Matter should not be offensive to you, because it is within what you have yourself stated. Think about it this way. If you're an all lives matter person, have you gotten upset if somebody has stated unborn lives matter? No, it's a subset. You've not got offended once. You might have even have posted it. What about the statement? You probably posted blue lives matter, patriots, or police, or whatever your viewpoint is, military, whatever. They matter. They're a subset. It's a group which has suffered because of an identity. And you've not been offended one time. So if you've gotten offended at Black Lives Matter, you might need to check yourself a little bit. Why are you getting offended? You haven't gotten offended at any of the other subsets but one. Why? So I want to conclude with this one thing, and it encapsulates everything we've said. And James wrote, "My brethren, let every one of you be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Quick to listen. Don't interpret everything immediately as being against you. Look for the best in other people. Try to understand what they're stating, and try not to contradict them. Where at all possible, listen to what they're saying, not to what you're interpreting. Because when words are fine in and of themselves, there should be no offense, unless we're assuming that they have this hidden meaning that is against a core value of mine. Be slow to speak. Just for a moment, don't hit the reply button. I'm having to do this myself. Don't respond. Don't go for a meme. Don't do, just pause. Be slow to speak and slow to type or whatever. And slow to anger. Don't let your passion for what you believe and for what your core values are override other people's core values. Don't get angry. That is how, at the end of the day, to take sides properly. Sides are okay, just so long as we take them properly. We all have viewpoints. We all have core values. Do it in a way that we can end up as Christians on one side with one ultimate core value at the end of the day.